Now I know how to restart.
Welcome to another episode of Financially Fit Radio. I'm Cory Sickles with Safe Harbor Retirement Group and Wealth Advisors. If you'd like more information about today's show, just give us a call at 614-760-0670, or you can always visit us online at safeharboroh.com. Once you're on our website, feel free to check on our radio page. You can watch previous episodes. You can also subscribe to our podcast on Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, or Spotify. Also, feel free to watch our video or watch our radio show on our YouTube channel. Just type in Safe Harbor Retirement Group. You can watch the radio show as well as you can watch other financial topics as well. You know, we're here to address any issues, inquiries, or questions you might have about retirement. Just remember, all of our meetings are complimentary. There's no financial obligation. And today we're going to talk about estate planning essentials. And really what we kind of want to do is find ways that you can basically secure your legacy. Before we dive into that, let me introduce to you my co-host this week and every week, and that's Tony Shore. Tony, how are you?
I am doing great, Cory. Had a great week. Been busy with the family. That's good. Just and nothing too crazy right now, but it is a busy time. I know it's a busy time for you as well. You know, we're headed into tax season, so that makes people think about their finances, want to get everything in order. And I know you help your clients out with that and work with tax professionals there. So it is an important time of year. There's a lot going on. But our topic today is a huge one, and one I've had some experience with because of, and we've talked about this, but my grandfather passed at 101 and then had to divide up the farm between his kids, and I saw what he did right and what he didn't do right. And I know you're going to talk about some of those things today, trying to get my parents straightened out because, you know, their mom's in a nursing home with Parkinson's, dad's 80. And so, they should have had everything worked out a long time ago. And I wish they had been working with you a long time ago because it would all be taken care of. But this is an important part because I saw what my grandfather not being fully prepared with his legacy and estate planning and what it did to the family. And if you want to keep family harmony after you're gone and do your loved ones a favor, I mean, this topic is huge, isn't it, Cory?
It is. I mean, it's a very important topic, Tony. And I think you're right. Here's the main thing about when you do estate planning or legacy planning, really what you're wanting to make sure happens is everything goes to where you want it to go. And now some family members might not like it, whatever those decisions are. However, at least they have a document they can read. And we're talking about your grandfather, but hopefully in most situations, you actually sit down with who's going to be receiving any of your estate, and you kind of let them know beforehand. So they're not blindsided about it before.
And that's what happened with my grandfather's estate. What happened is he appointed one of the kids executor, and only that child and the attorney knew what was going on. The other three siblings did not.
Yeah.
And so I saw what that did to the family. And you've got to communicate with everybody your wishes and desires. And my grandfather had a pretty, thorough will, but had he had trusts and had he communicated with the family his intentions beforehand, with everyone in the family who was involved and all the inheritors, that's the key, I think, isn't it?
It is. And, the other thing I would probably say too, Tony, is, even if you have parents today and you're not sure what's going on with their estate, there's nothing wrong with bringing that up, especially if they're healthy.
Yes.
You really want to discuss these things when you're healthy. You don't want to discuss them when you only have 1 month or 2 months or 3 months to live. No. Because at that point in time, a lot of people don't want to start talking about this because now it's a reality.
Yeah.
So do it while you're healthy. Make sure that we're going to talk about a lot of different things, but make sure that you get all this stuff ironed out so you don't have to worry about it. We never know when our day is going to come.
Right.
It could be today, it could be tomorrow, it could be 20 or 30 years from now. But you want to be able to have everything written out to make sure it's going to go where you want it to go. Don't leave it up to someone else if you don't have anything at all. and leave it up to probate courts and judges and attorneys to decide how that money or how your estate's actually going to be distributed.
Yeah. Agreed. I just think that's so important. So today, Cory, I know you're talking about some of the essentials to estate planning
Yeah.
and how to secure your legacy. Where do you want to begin?
Well, first of all, I think you really have to go through and you really need to itemize everything that you have, right? And we're not, I'm not just, really what I'm talking about here is our physical things, right? Property, physical investments. You might even want to sit there and say, you know what? My wedding ring goes to so-and-so, but you want to make sure you have a list of all the things that are important to you that you actually can write down. And then you're going to want to associate a name with that, whoever you want to be able to receive that. Because if there's certain, physical things that you want to be able to give to somebody and you don't have a name besides that, it's now kind of gets into, if you have 4 kids, the first person that potentially gets into that house is going to, receive any of those things. So if you want to make sure it goes to somebody, put it down in writing. Then, of course, you kind of get into all those non-physical assets, right? Now we're talking about your IRAs, your 401ks, your life insurance policies. It could be your house too. That's also kind of a physical too, but those are all the different types of assets that you're really going to be able to have. And here's the one thing I don't think people realize. When we start talking about IRAs and 401ks and insurance policies, the beneficiary form is what matters. It is not, and let me rephrase that. It is not what you have in your will, and it is not what you actually have in a trust. You have beneficiary forms for that, and that is going to override whatever you have in your will or trust. So you need to make sure, also when we start talking about that, is you need to make sure all these accounts are updated on a constant basis. Things happen. People die. You have divorces.
You have weddings.
So you want to make sure that you're updating these beneficiaries forms at least once a year to make sure they're current. I've seen clients come in, Tony, and they've been divorced for, a few years and they've remarried and, their ex-spouse is still on their pension plans.
Oh,
or their 403B or their 401k. And
sure.
it doesn't matter what's actually in that will or trust. It's what actually is on that beneficiary form and the way that's going to be distributed.
Yeah, and I know you've said in the past that you've seen that happen a lot where people think, oh, I've made a will and that'll take care of it. I've updated my will.
Yep.
I got divorced 15 years ago, got remarried, have a new family, have kids. It was just a short marriage. I was young. And they never changed the beneficiary, but they changed the will, and they don't understand beneficiary designations take precedent over the will. And it's a great way to avoid probate because a will has to go through probate typically, and beneficiary designations do not. So if you designate somebody as a beneficiary to account, that's legally binding.
That's correct. Yeah, that's exactly right. And in most cases, for your retirement accounts and insurance policies and things like that, most people always have beneficiaries on there. Now, whether they're the correct ones, that's a different discussion.
Yeah.
But that's usually not the issue. Usually the issue that you have are usually 3 things that I see more common is our bank accounts, your title on your house, or your deed on your house, and then titles to your vehicles. Those are usually the 3 things that I actually see issues with when clients come in or prospects come in and sit down with us. So for a bank account, it's very easily. You just want to make sure you have it set up with payable on death. That payable on death could go to your spouse. It could go to your nieces and nephews, kids, grandchildren, wherever you want it to have those funds. But the most important part is have that on there because all of a sudden you don't want to have those bank accounts go through to the probate court.
Yeah.
You can also set up a transfer on death affidavit, or sometimes it's called a quick claim deed for your house.
Yep.
And again, what you're doing is really putting the beneficiary on there. Again, if you just have it set up in your will and you don't have a transfer on death or quick claim deed to your house, that asset's going to go through probate.
Yeah.
So again, you
Yeah.
need to be able to make sure that you have that done. And then, of
Yeah.
course, the last thing, you can do a transfer on death for your vehicles. That's usually not an issue while you have both spouses, or not both, but both people living. But once one passes away, and you're the remaining spouse, that's where you really need to make sure you have that
Yeah. And that's
set
the
up the
part.
correct way.
Yeah, my grandfather didn't do that, and that caused some contention because the one brother thought he should get the truck and came and took it. My dad thought he should get the truck.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, he didn't do the vehicles. He did do the transfer on death deed, or the quick claim deed, whatever you want to call it. The transfer on death for any property is important, especially if you own a farm or a business like my grandfather did. He owned a farm. So he did that part right. He had a pretty good will, but it was kind of convoluted, and it could be interpreted different ways. So it
Sure.
wasn't clear. I don't think he worked with a great estate planning attorney. And I know for our listeners out there, your clients, you offer this too, but you work with a great estate planning attorney that you can recommend, that you've worked with for a number of years. You work closely with them to help your clients set up their estate plans, right?
Yeah, we do. And when you come into our office, you can meet with the attorney,
Yeah.
sit down and discuss things, right? And here's the most important part of this. The first part is you need to determine what you have, right?
Right.
Right. And then you need to kind of determine how you want those assets divided. And we start talking about, retirement accounts, bank accounts, things that actually have value to them, monetary value to them. Then you kind of want to determine who's going to receive what. And it's always best to be able to use percentages, Tony, for the fact that you don't know what your estate's going to be worth when you actually pass. And if you actually
Right.
put a solid number down there, like $100,000 or some type of figure down there, and that's all that's left, then that causes other issues on, later on down the line. So always
Yep.
use
Good
percentages
point.
is what I recommend when
Good
we start
point.
talking about, how you want to divide those assets up. Then you kind of have to, now when you sit down with the attorney, even when you come in and meet with us, we need to get a good understanding of what you're really trying to accomplish, right?
Right.
What we want to understand what you have, how you want things to go, and then we can start discussing, do you actually maybe need a will, or do you need a trust, right? And if you have different, obviously there's different types of trust, or revocable trust or irrevocable trust, whether you're trying to do what I consider Medicaid, or long-term care planning, then you might need an irrevocable trust. But most people out there, it's really kind of debate, do I need a will, or do I kind of need a trust, right? And a lot of it has to do with is who you're giving the money to, or who you're giving your assets to, and how you want those assets to be, ultimately received and distributed, to your beneficiaries. So obviously, here's one thing I don't think a lot of people realize, Tony. Wills, if you have a will, it can go any, whatever percentage you want, however you want it to go, but everything does go lump sum to your beneficiaries. And obviously that could cause issues depending on the age of that child that you're maybe giving it to, right? You might
Right.
have something out there, and all of a sudden you're giving it to a child or a grandchild. They're under the age of 18 in the state of Ohio. Now it's going to cause all kind of issues because of guardianship and all this other type of stuff that you have to arrange for all that. So you need to understand the rules. And I don't think you want to actually have your grandchildren or your children that are that young that also all now have issues because everything's going through a guardianship, where you should have probably set up a trust.
Trusts are really, really a valuable tool with estate planning. And I think people hear the word trust, people who aren't in the know, or you don't know what you don't know, and this is something that you definitely need to know. And that's, trust can be used by anyone. It doesn't matter how much or how little you have. You can put anything in a trust. You have to fund it. You have to put something in it, and but like, you can put land, you can put your home, you
Sure.
can put assets inside that trust, accounts, and I think money, and that's so important, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. But here's the most important part about that, Tony, is now you can actually kind of protect the ones that you're actually giving that money to.
Yeah.
I mean, how many, I see this all the time where, a parent will have, a client of mine will have two children, right? They'll have one. Here's why I always say, if you give them $1,000, a year from now, they're going to have $1,000. The other child that you give the $1,000 to, as soon as they walk out of the room, the $1,000 is gone.
Hmm.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
So my point of this is if you don't think that if you're going to give money or potentially a large sum of money to an individual or to one of your children or grandchildren that you don't think that can manage their money, then you might want to set a trust up and be able to limit how much they can actually take, or at least give them, certain parameters when they can start taking the money. For example, they got to be 25 and they only get a third. Then they get the other third at 30, then they get the remainder at 35. Or maybe they can't manage it at all, and you want to be able to give them a certain amount of money per month, and you can set all that type of stuff up in a trust. So there's a lot of good reasons to set up a trust. Not everybody needs them, but it can make things a lot easier, because now also when you start setting up your beneficiary forms for a lot of the accounts that we talked about earlier, now the trust can become the beneficiary of all that. If you ever want to change anything, you just go and amend your trust, rather go out and have to amend all these different types of accounts that you have out there as well. So, from an administrative standpoint, yes, it might be a little bit more tough to set up because you got to go through an attorney to set all this type of stuff up. But in the long run, it's going to make it easier on you. But more importantly, it's going to make it easier on who you're actually giving that money to, your beneficiaries.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really important, Cory, and I'm glad you brought that up. And trusts can help you avoid probate as well, right? I mean, that's a big reason people set up trusts, is to avoid probate with whatever's in that trust, right? Because it's assigning a beneficiary to whatever's in that trust.
That's exactly right. A lot of people don't realize this, but 100% of wills go through probate. And if you set it up the right way, 0% of trusts go through probate. So, there's a good way to be able to avoid the probate process, to make sure that everything goes the most efficient way. Because once you go through probate, now you're going to be getting into fees and, to attorneys and all that type of stuff for them to be able to probate those assets. And also it can be time, right? My God, when we actually had COVID, I mean, you were talking all of a sudden anywhere from 6 months to a year for stuff to come out of probate. So, I mean, that by having a trust, you avoid all that. Who knows what's going to happen in the future, where we might have some other type of situation that allows the court system to kind of slow down or shut down for a period of time as well. Yeah. So this is a good way to be able to do that. And the other side of it is, most times when you have a trust, the one thing I do tell my clients is you need to sit down with your beneficiaries and let them know how things are going to be divided. Don't let it happen, just like you mentioned earlier, after the fact. All it's going to do is cause issues with the family. And I hear this all the time, Tony. A client will come in and go, you know what? All my kids get along fine.
Yep, they do now.
They do now, but it's amazing what money gets once you start getting with assets and money, what that actually can do to a family.
Yeah, because my brother and his siblings were tight-knit, good people, loving, caring people, and it was crazy to see what this did. Yeah. And they both, when people feel they're right, or they have something in their head that's going to happen, and it doesn't, and they're in the middle of dealing with the loss of a parent or a spouse, or it's hard. And I've seen it firsthand, and it's just, you want to avoid that at all costs. And it could have been so easy. It can be so easily avoided.
It can.
Yeah.
Yep. It's just like anything else. You want to communicate. Hopefully everyone does know what's going on if something does happen. Worst case scenario, at least maybe you have a trust and it's all written out and they can all review it. So but at the end of the day, I think just like anything else, everyone just wants to be in the know.
Yeah.
Right. No one wants to be blindsided about anything.
Right.
So if you went through all the toughest part, which is going through and getting all this stuff done, share it. right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
make sure everyone's on the same page. So when we start talking about, all this type of, whether you need a trust or a will, but there's other documents that you need to make sure that you have as well. We're talking about your financial and your healthcare power of attorney, and then of course your living will as well. So all that's really, now those are all the actual documents that you're actually going to be able to have to make sure everything's in order from an estate plan. And here's the other part about this. Just because you do it today doesn't mean that you don't have to go back and review this stuff. Again, things change. You need to go make sure that's all updated, right? You might end up having your spouse, for example, as your primary health care or your financial power of attorney, and all of a sudden you get a divorce or maybe they pass away. You need to make sure that's updated to now have a new primary and a new contingent. So, things do change. Make sure they get updated on an annual basis. And, once you have all this inventory, you have all your documents, right? The next thing you need to make sure of is that whoever your trustee or your executor or maybe your kids, you need to make sure they know where these documents are. That's another big important. Just don't hide it. They need to be able to have that.
Right.
So one of the things that we offer our clients, Tony, is what we call our generational vault. So the nice part about the generational vault is you can actually put all of your account information in there, right? Every asset, every liability that you have, all your IRA accounts, all that stuff can be in there. And it's, for example, for a lot of the IRA or the investment accounts, those can be updated every day. We have the ability in our software to link those accounts up. So you're getting that, getting up to date. The nice part is you can go in there every day and now you have a complete net worth picture, because not only is it your investment accounts, but it could be your life insurance. It could be the other assets that you own. And of course, the liabilities that's offsetting your net worth. But you can go in there and log in 24 hours, 7 days a week in a secure environment and be able to see all this.
Yeah, I love the generational vault, and I can't believe that you offer it to your clients at no additional or extra charge, because you can upload anything you want there. It's basically unlimited storage, photos. You can leave a video for your loved ones to watch after you're gone. You can see active accounts in there. That's what I like. I can check the status of my IRA by logging into the generational vault and looking and seeing all my accounts in one place, and leave powers of attorney documents, copies of wills and trusts, and everything is in there. And my spouse and my kids know how to access it. And I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. And the nice part about that, Tony, is, you can upload all your documents just like you just mentioned. But you also have the ability then to be able to share whatever information you want, maybe with your kids or your executor or your trustee. And if you don't want them to be able to see all the account information, that's fine. Just give them access to your legal folder. And that's all they have access to, is just to be able to go in and look at that type of stuff. Maybe you don't want to share what your complete net worth is, but you want someone to be able to go in and pull those documents down if the time should come where they need to have access to them, right?
Yeah.
It's a great thing. You're traveling, something happens, you can pull down your healthcare power of attorney or your financial power of attorney wherever you are, and be able to conduct whatever business that needs to be conducted when you're out of town as well.
Yeah,
So
scans of your passport, medical information. I mean, it's amazing, and it's like a virtual safety deposit box, and it's very secure. It uses the same encryption as banks use. I mean, it's fantastic. What a great tool for estate planning and legacy planning.
that's part of it. Just because you get the stuff written down, you just need to make sure your loved ones know where all these documents are. And this is a great way to be able to do that.
Yeah. Well, Cory, we're out of time. It flew by, this topic. We could probably do a series of shows on this topic and dig into it. But if our listeners have questions, how can they get a hold of you?
Well, the best way to get a hold of us is you can always give us a call at 614-760-0670, or you can visit our website at safeharboroh.com. If you want to come in and just discuss, legacy or estate, or even enhanced planning, we can do that. And remember, all of our meetings are complimentary. There's no obligation. If you have a financial plan, you want a second opinion, give us a call. We can provide those second set of eyes. If you don't have a financial plan, we can put one in place for you. And believe me, part of that financial plan is going to be discussing your estate plan as well. So again, all meetings are complimentary. Just give us a call at 614-760-0670, or you can always visit us online at safeharboroh.com.
All right, and that does it for today's episode of Financially Fit Radio with Cory Sickles.
Join us next week for another episode of Financially Fit Radio.